All right, we're recording now. Welcome to our fourth live call of the social dimension of Gaia Education Design for Sustainability program. I'm happy to see you all here, and others may join us or just watch later at their own leisure time. I understand, Gio, you'll be leaving us after a few minutes to get on with some other work that you've committed to.
Yes.
I will be here for the full hour. Deborah, are you free for the whole hour? Okay, great.
Alison, are you recording? I don't see if you are.
Yep.
You are?
I am.
Oh yeah, I see the recording. I'm sorry. That's fine.
Okay. You're all being recorded. Great. So I invited folks to, if they wanted to bring something to the call today representing some kind of ritual or celebration or or any kind of event that is important to you or to your culture, recognizing a holiday or anything along those lines. And so I thought we would start by each of us saying hello and sharing, if they want to, something that they brought, or just sharing anything they like about a recent or upcoming celebration. And so I'll start. I'm Allison, and I wanted to share a few things. On the table behind me, you can see a pumpkin with a face on it. Let me see if I can get that. So this was carved by Mark, my partner, to celebrate Halloween at the end of October, which is, I think, a pagan holiday having to do with making scary faces on pumpkins and dressing up as strange creatures to frighten people and get candy from them. Consumerism combined with an ancient pagan ritual, probably. And then along the same lines, another co-opted pagan ritual, my daughter has created this little Christmas tree because she's already excited about Christmas coming. And we also celebrate solstice, which is a little bit before Christmas, and many of the rituals that originally were solstice rituals have been turned into Christmas rituals. I also brought some corn that I grew. Corn being an ancient crop grown on this continent from many thousands of years ago, and one that's frequently used in a ritual coming up tomorrow, Thanksgiving, during which we celebrate and give thanks for all of the gifts. At least that's what I do. Other people talk about things that are not completely true about when settlers from Europe came here and made friends with the native people. And we all know now that the genocide that horribly happened all over the world also happened here, and that many people who suffered from that, their children's children who are alive now are educating us all in how to appropriately honor their customs. And so we're trying to learn from that and reclaim it. I also brought a few stones that I gathered a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you can see them. Some nice little stones from the side of a lake where I had gone with my dear friend and former husband, Chad. We had gone there the day that we got engaged to a lake called Lake Michigan, one of the Great Lakes. And I went there recently after he died and picked up those stones when I did my own private ritual to move through my grief. So that's what I wanted to share. And as is our custom, I will call on someone else. And when you have shared, you can call on someone else. I went on at great length. Please feel free to be more brief than I was. I'll call on Gio since I know you've got to get off the call soon.
Okay, thank you, Alison. I enjoy seeing what you had to share. And I didn't see the email asking to bring something. So I didn't bring anything, but because I'm in my office, I do have something here that I would like to share. Celebrations are very important to me. I celebrate every bit that I can. So the way I like to celebrate is like this. Oh, little light, little lay. Oh, little light, little lay. Oh, little light, little lay, little light, little lay, little light, light, little lay. Oh, I like the mountains, and I like the vibration too. And that's why I sing, that is why I dance, that's why I bring you this song. You can imagine the rest. Everybody dancing, bumping, screaming. So that's my share. And I'll pass it on to Martina, who is right next to me on my screen.
Okay, I also did not see the email before, so I don't have anything with me. But what came to my mind when you talked about rituals in our culture or something that is dear to us, I remembered when I was a child, we used to bring a Norwegian custom to Italy because my mom is from Norway for Christmas celebration, and that is to dance around the Christmas tree. So the whole family and friends get around the Christmas tree, sing and dance. And I remember that I thought it was special because none of my friends did that here. So this is why I remember that particularly. And something more recent that I have rediscovered is also rituals for the solstice and the equinox. And that's something that I discovered in the permaculture garden that I'm visiting. And they organize small celebrations and rituals for that. And the last one I was at was a lot about thanking the earth for everything that she gives us, and a lot of grounding also, and singing and dancing as well. And I really, really enjoyed that and felt how much force and power that gives us, strength. So I think I will try to make it to these rituals more regularly. Okay, then I will pass on to Sarah.
Thanks, Martina. So unfortunately, I didn't see the email either. I'm sorry, Alison. So I'll just improvise. I think I've been kind of celebrating various rituals and things in different countries, so I don't really know anymore what is most important to me. For example, I was in New York for the past 6 years, celebrating Thanksgiving every year, and so this is the first year that I won't be celebrating it because I'm back in Europe. But Christmas has always been a very important occasion for celebration for me, not because I'm in any way religious, but because it's such an important time to gather with family, especially when we live in different parts of the world and everything. It's really the only time of year that we can all come together. So as usual, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm going to be spending it in the UK this year. And I also wanted to mention a little bit along the same lines of the solstice and everything. I've been celebrating solstices a little bit more over the past few years, mostly the summer solstice. And also I've been celebrating new moons and full moons a lot over the past few years. And I've realized that that's something that's really important to me. I feel like the moon has a really, really big influence on our lives, or at least my life, in terms of sleep patterns and so many different things. I find it absolutely fascinating how much some kind of stellar body can have an influence on our daily lives. So I really kind of revere that relationship between the moon and life on Earth. So I'm hoping that I can continue celebrating full moons and new moons in Barcelona, where I'm moving to tomorrow. So yeah, lots of different things to celebrate.
Okay, I'm going to disappear upstairs for a bit.
And I am passing it on to Nadia, who is right in the middle for me.
Hi, I just joined in, so I didn't get the question. I think I can guess what you're asking for. Is it talking about our rituals or our celebrations? Is it about Christmas or is it in general?
I sent an email, I apologize, I sent it just a couple of hours ago, inviting people to bring something to the call if they would like, that represents any kind of celebration or ritual or holiday that's important to you and your culture.
I can't really think of anything that's important to my culture and to me. I tend to not celebrate much, actually. I never really thought about it until just right now. I'm not really aware of any rituals that I take, except that I do go on holidays pretty much regularly. Every summer, I have to go and spend my holiday in France. So I guess it is a ritual. I just felt it was at times an obligation, at other times a necessity. And I think now it's just a habit. It's something I can't conceive not going there. The other thing that just came up is I usually, not always, but I usually spend the Christmas holidays there as well. And I actually don't enjoy that unless, unlike the summer holiday that I enjoy, the Christmas holiday, I really don't enjoy it. And so this year, change of plans for the very first time. I'm spending Christmas in England. I have no idea how that's going to be like, and I don't know if it's going to be better or not. So I don't know if I've answered the question, but I'll pass it on to, I don't even know who hasn't talked to you yet. Can you raise your hand so I know who I need to, let's say, Deborah, well, I hope you're feeling better. I heard you were not well last week, so I'll pass it on to Deborah.
Thanks, Nadia. Yes, this time last week I was, I had a bad fall last Tuesday night and was in hospital till sort of 2 a.m. with a badly sprained ankle, and I still can't walk. I'm still on crutches and it's all black and blue, so it's very exciting. But I'm feeling much better than I was this time last week. I think I was still in a bit of shock this time last week. So I like this question because celebration and ceremony has become a much bigger part of my life in the last few years for many reasons that some of you have mentioned. I've always been interested in the Celtic festivals and have been living in community the last few years where lots of people celebrated that. So that's always been rich, and I love the winter solstice celebration at Findhorn Eco Village, and I'm really sad to miss that this year. They make a huge, beautiful spiral of natural materials in the Universal Hall, and it's candle lit, and you walk in silence, and it's open for 48 hours, and you can go any time of the night or day and just walk the spiral in and out, reflecting on your year past and your year that you want to come. And then they have a huge nature altar covered in beautiful little sculptures and things representing the 4 elements, and you can sit and meditate there. And then you can go to another table and pick your angel card for the year as kind of like something to guide you. So I didn't even know I was going to share about that, but that suddenly came up, realizing I wouldn't be there this year and realizing how much I love that celebration. What I did bring this evening is these, which are 2 very dried up and kind of crumbling headdresses that my now husband and I made for each other when we'd been together for about a few months, and we wanted to make a bigger commitment to each other. So on Beltane, May the 1st, we just didn't tell anyone. This was just for us. It was our kind of practice year. We went to the river and we had a hand fasting ceremony, and we bound our wrists together with ribbons and we made promises to each other. And this was our way to kind of practice being committed and having agreements and promises to each other for a year before we got engaged. And then we got married. So those are very special to me. And you can probably see, because he is really into ceremony and celebration and has bringing it even more into my life. Behind me, there's a kind of a picture frame, a poster up in the corner there, which is very colourful. And that's a ketubah, which is a Jewish, it's a watercolor painting some friends of ours made for us with our marriage vows on it. And that was, so we've kind of been trying to blend our sort of pagan Celtic earth-based spirituality, which we're both interested in, with some of his Jewish heritage. And we wrote our own vows, but we had it made into this ketubah, which is you have the kind of public picture of your vows that reminds you of the promises you made to each other. So that's just a few ways that I enjoy celebrations. But I'm also, as Sarah was saying, I love celebrating the new moon and the full moon, and we'll be doing that this week. Yeah, I could go on for ages talking about this. It's great. Any excuse to have a party and celebrate life and appreciate all the goodness. I'll pass on before I talk too much. So I will pass to Therese. Did you share yet?
Thank you. Wow, it's like all very nice to hear what you're celebrating, what rituals you have. I read the email half an hour ago and I was like, oh no, like what can I think of? And I brought something that you saw me with already last week. It's a simple coffee or teacup. But when I was, at some point I had to introduce myself and we were asked to introduce ourselves according to a TED Talk, which is called, I'm not sure, maybe some of you know it, Don't Ask Me Where I'm From, Ask Me Where I'm Local. Have you heard about it? Well, it's about, you didn't say where you came from, but you presented yourself along your rituals, your relationships, and your restrictions. And regarding the rituals, I said, I'm originally from Austria, and I think Vienna is kind of known for the coffee house culture, which is kind of a ritual, like you go to a cafe and you sit down and either you chat or you're alone and you engage with yourself or with your surrounding and you can be creative. And funnily, because I presented myself back in the days along these rituals, I also figured that it makes completely sense because although my first thought was that it's typical for where I'm originally from, also to countries where I lived, like in Sweden, there is the fika culture, like also kind of a coffee and cake time. And also when I went to Argentina, that mate, like kind of a ritual around a hot beverage. So it's something that's, yeah, I'm local in different places, but the rituals are kind of shared. So this is one ritual. And something I also don't need to bring a lot, and I think I cannot imitate now my facial expression after I've danced some tango. But for me, tango is not simply a dance, but for me, a moment where I can let completely go and be completely present. And this is for me a very healing ritual to just be in a moment. And yeah, I think the more I talk about it, the more the smile, the facial expression comes back. Yeah, but I would say I make it that short and give the speech, the word to who's next to me, and this is Catherine Hone, something.
Yeah, I couldn't find my mouse. Catherine, Catherine Hone. Yeah, I have the same thing. I only just read the mail. So, and I was thinking, oh, rituals. So I'm glad you were before me, Teresa, because I have about 10 teapots on my windowsill and I'm English. And I don't know if there are other English people here, but we're completely obsessed with tea. And that is a ritual, absolutely. And I was having a little think about it. And in the winter, I live with some other people here, and the first thing we do when we get back from the farm and the gardens is we light our stove, and it's got a nice window in it so you can see the fire, and we make a big pot of tea with all sorts of lovely things in, like ginger and stuff out the garden, and I thought, oh yeah, that's a ritual, isn't it? That's really nice. That's a sort of ending to the day. And also at the gardens as well with our group of people who work there. We have a special teapot with garden gnomes on it, and we drink tea and we sit in our what's that thing called, polytunnel, and that's really our sort of ritual, getting together and talking about stuff, working stuff out with each other. So yeah, very much tea and coffee as well. So yeah, that's our rituals. Yeah, and I have to now, I missed the first bit of this meeting. I have to pass on to the person next to me. Is that right? That's Alison, I think.
Yeah, just to whoever hasn't spoken next, who you want to invite. I think Tim and Taylor might be the only ones who haven't gone yet. So how about if you pick one of them?
Tim?
Sure. This is hello everybody. This is Tim. Sorry, my video is not working today. I have tried it numerous times, but so you're gonna have to look at my company logo instead. Which it's a pretty logo, but it's not as pretty as me. So this is an interesting was an interesting request. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach to it. In that late last week, I lost a very dear friend to brain cancer, and he had been suffering for several years. And so I, along with some other friends, have been, kind of preparing ourselves for a different kind of celebration, which is a celebration of his life, which will be next week. So in the spirit of Thanksgiving, which it is tomorrow here in the United States, I'm choosing to be thankful for the time that I have with this dear friend of many years, and to think fondly of the times that I had and celebrate his life, because it was a good one. So that's where I'm at, and I'll hand it with that in mind. I'll hand it over to Taylor. Thanks.
Hi, thanks, Tim. So I typically celebrate Christmas and Thanksgiving with my family, but I've been living in Nepal for about 3 years now. So right now is basically the month of all of the biggest Hindu celebrations. So we just finished Dasain, which is a 2-week festival celebrating the goddess Durga, who is kind of like the divine feminine Shakti rising culmination of all different Hindu gods. And I was actually gifted this kurta behind me, and then you're given these sort of marigolds and now dried flowers, but this is my ama and bua. I don't know if you can see, probably not, but anyways, it's a picture of a really old Nepali couple who have totally taken me in as their own. And I also was gifted this beautiful blue sari, which like wraps around, and if you've ever seen like a typical Indian wedding, this is what they wear. And this was a gift to me for Tihar, which is the Festival of Lights, and it celebrates another goddess, Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. So although these aren't necessarily the celebrations that I grew up with, it's been an amazing experience immersing myself in this culture and having the incredible hospitality and kindness from the local people here. So this is, yeah, a little bit of the rituals that I've come to accept here. So thank you.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that's everyone, right? Okay, great. Well, as usual, we invite questions from you on these calls, and we attempt to provide answers and also invite answers from the rest of the people on the call, recognizing that in many areas you all are the experts. And so our job as facilitators is to bring out what is there among our people in our group. I also have a few questions to ask you about this call. If we have time, I would love to hear about the value of these live calls for you, what you enjoy about them, whether you liked having Dominic Barter on the last call as a guest speaker, if you'd like more of that kind of thing. Whether you would like more sort of presentations on these calls, or if you enjoy just having the dialogue with the people on the call. Also would like to check in on the forums, the single forum, or if you would rather have a separate forum for each module the way it used to be. Yeah, so those are some things that I would love to discuss with you. I also would love to touch on the topic of celebration and art. We have some exciting individual and group work for you in this module, which is only a week long. This module closes in about a week, and then you have the final module after that, also quite a short one. So, so I wanted to first invite any questions that you have about the course. You can raise your hand or just unmute yourself and start talking.
Allison, when you say questions about the course, is it course overall or specifically on related to this module?
Anything.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, this is Tim, then, so I'll go. I had some really, I own a creative business, so sometimes creative and business can be at odds with one another. And so I found the last module and this module really resonated a lot with me. I'd be really curious to hear how other people balance kind of creativity and unbridled creativity with what we call in our industry design constraints. By taking that like raw creative energy and kind of honing it and focusing it. I found the module was interesting, but I didn't find that a lot of people talked about how to kind of target or focus creativity in a way that brought about measured results or kind of specific outcomes. So I'd just be curious to if anybody other than myself thinks about that or thinks about that when they think about their own creativity and how they channel it.
Okay, so how to channel your creativity for a specific purpose, if I understood your question correctly.
Yeah, sorry if I was a little long-winded.
No, that's fine. Yeah, any responses to that? Just go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to respond. Deborah?
Well, I'll say something, but it's not really an answer to the question. So I thought I'd just, join in and get the conversation going. I guess I'm curious as to how many people feel that they are creative, because it's one of those words like leadership that sometimes we associate more with and sometimes we don't, or sometimes we think it means somebody else. And I come from a science background and didn't think of myself as a creative person until recent years when I realized I was, and it can be creative around projects and creative around design and creative around other ways of expressing. And I think in relation to Tim's question, my journey has actually been trying to tap into that unbridled creativity and make space for creativity and use that part of my brain or use that energy more. So I'm too good at the planning and narrowing it down and making it into a very linear goal orientated thing. So for me, I've had to learn more the other side of the skills of how to make space for flow and emergence and new ideas to come in a less cognitive way. But I will say that I found mind mapping really helpful and for gathering ideas and then starting to sort those ideas into themes, and then you can get into project plans and all sorts of things. But for me it's been more about how to access that creativity and make space for it. That's been the question. So I'm curious to hear what other people's process is.
Yeah, I guess maybe to that end I will append my question to say, how do people find a balance between those two? Because it's a really good point. It's like making sure that you have enough time for each in order to get the kind of outcomes that you want. And being able to make sure that you have if you're doing it yourself, if you have your own, frame of mind to be able to balance those things, or if you're doing it in a group, making sure that the group is appropriately balanced so that you have people who can facilitate the creative side of things and people who can facilitate the kind of more planning procedural type things.
Yeah, I resonate with what Deborah was saying about really needing to put in place practices to access creativity. And for me, a lot of my creativity these days comes out in planning group work, whether it's training for people who are going to be consensus facilitators, or I'm going to facilitate a meeting myself, or I'm going to sit with people who are in conflict and listen to them, help them hear each other, support them in hearing each other. What I often have to do, or what I find really supportive of me before doing that, is to first kind of map out some questions I have or a rough outline of what I want to accomplish, and then maybe jot down some notes about how I want to do that, and then to take a break. And often for me, the break, I need to be alone. I need to go outside, be in nature, go for a walk with the dog, or just sit somewhere on a log in the woods, and just kind of try to empty myself. And I find that that's when the muse enters me, is when I can clear my head of all of the to-do lists and shoulds and all the chatter in my head. So, and then when I come back to the task, I often have a completely different idea of how I want to do it. Or at the very least, I'm in a place of acceptance of whatever shows up, which that kind of presence feels like the most creative place for me to be.
I would completely agree with that. For me personally, that's a bike ride, preferably through the woods. But I definitely agree with like being able to kind of step away and get outside of your element. And oftentimes at my company, I encourage our team to go, even if it's just to walk around a couple blocks. You know, we're in the city, in the heart of Chicago, so there's not a log in nature to go sit in, usually very nearby.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree that like being able to take a break and step back and you know, kind of just clear your mind of things allows you to be open to so many more potential ideas and see things in a new light.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was on a bus recently and they were showing movies. You can't get away from the movies on the bus these days. There's a TV screen right in your face. I didn't even want to be watching it. But then there was this movie on about, what's his name, who created Apple Macintosh, or
Steve Jobs.
Yeah, Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
And he was talking to his team about they were going to completely change the way that they worked. And he said, I want all of you to just cancel whatever you were going to do today, whatever was on your list. You're not doing it. I want everyone to make something new. I don't care what it is. I don't care what it does. I want you to just make something new today. That's all I want you to do. And I found that idea to be really freeing to myself, to, if I was wanting to get into a more creative mood, to just free myself from all of the things that I thought I should do and just allow myself to make something, whatever it is.
Yeah, I like that idea. We used to close down the office on Friday afternoons for that very purpose of, and you know, it was perhaps a little bit more structured in that we were trying to brainstorm ideas for new products and services and stuff like that. But
Right.
the idea was similar to kind of Google's 20% time, where you just, you know, cordon off a specific part of the week dedicated to the purpose of creativity and brainstorming and coming up with new ideas.
20%. Yeah, I have a friend who, she taught me recently about the idea of only planning 70% of your time in any given day, you know, or week.
That's
Just
great advice.
fill your planner up with 70%. You know, don't fill it 100%. Fill it a half, maybe 3/4, and then you'll have the space available to take advantage of what comes up, whether it's an idea that you have or a friend you run into that needs support or whatever. I love that idea. I haven't managed to accomplish it yet, but it's a nice goal to strive for.
I'd like to add a little bit to that. Just I was on another one of these sorts of Zoom calls with some colleagues that I work with in another organization recently, and we were talking about creativity and well-being and all these kinds of things. And his top tip, which just made me so happy, was to have 1 or 2 days in his week. And I know it's only possible if you're self-employed, but I guess it is possible with weekends too. Have 1 or 2 days in the week where there's nothing in the diary like meetings or phone calls or things that have to be structured, and that you can just basically flow. Obviously it can still be a working day and a very productive day, but that he basically just flows from one thing to the next, whatever his curiosity or creativity or interest, motivation goes. And that he finds that brings a lot of timelessness and kind of creativity and spaciousness. And I just, when I heard that, I had such a yearning, like, oh my God, I've got to do that regularly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a tendency to really overschedule myself. So I like that, your idea, Alison, but I also love the idea of having at least 1 day a week where it's not scheduled at all. That would feel like such a treat, even though it can be super productive.
Yeah, that's become a lot more difficult once I had a child, because she's very social and likes to have scheduled time with other children, or time with other children, which often has to be scheduled because of all of the calendars that we're looking at. But I have always liked having Saturday unscheduled. And these days I've really been loving the time when I can just, as you said, just flow with whatever presents itself throughout the day. Those days are really precious to me. I love these calls too. I love all of the things that I do in my life that I do with other people that only work because we schedule them. But I also really love those days when I can listen to what the earth is telling me needs to happen, or the plants are telling me what needs to happen, or my daughter is telling me what needs to happen. And I can only really listen to those voices if I can clear out my schedule to do so.
I completely agree. I keep 8 to noon every day, if possible, open. You know, occasionally I might schedule something in that time, but usually it's really about just making sure that nothing is, that time is precious and blocked off in my calendar to make sure that I can not only catch up on the things that I need to do, but as you said, you know, allow myself to, you know, write, do some of the things that kind of brought me to where I'm at in my career anyway, you know.
Great, thanks for that question. Tim, do you feel like you got some good juice from that?
Yeah, that was awesome, thanks.
Cool. Other questions about this module, about creativity, or about the program?
Yeah, or responses to how you're feeling about creativity and celebrations.
Therese?
So yeah, unfortunately this time I haven't started with the new module, but I would like to still jump on the train that we just talked about regarding how can we, like as I understood it, how can we kind of foster and enhance creativity at our workplace, for example. And as I understood it, yeah, you were wondering how this can be, how this can be realized. And yesterday I was in a movie and I watched Bohemian Rhapsody, and I remember right now the scene where actually it was a tense situation, but people, the team or the family, the band just came together, and one person kind of starting a beat, and then it jumped on, and another person said, okay, well, I see some potential there, and then it just kind of, yeah, the flow evolved by itself. And apart from, I guess, what can be done in a company from creating a time frame, I think this is also where the first module comes in with this building community. Like then my questions would be, in how far is there a trust? Like I don't know your company and how it's structured or what position exactly you have. But just, is there like this trust relationship that people basically can just feel actually that they have the ownership, feel empowered to speak up if they have an idea? So for me, this would, in my thinking right now, being kind of the baseline to make this creativity actually start, like, yeah. Some random thoughts. I sometimes struggle a bit in structuring my thoughts as there are too many of them at once in my head.
I don't think anyone else ever has that experience. Just joking, in case that wasn't obvious. Other questions or comments? Catherine.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand the question from Richard, I think. Thinking about how creativity and structure, how they can go together in a work situation. I was just thinking about what I do. I give permaculture lessons, courses. And I think, yeah, from the permaculture, we assume that the more restrictions you have, the more creative you can be. And I was trying to sort of hone it down to, well, what do we actually do? And I think it's looking for improvements, your sort of reflection cycle. You're looking for improvements of things that are already there. So that could be the working mechanisms of a company, for example, or the products. And then, indeed, what Teresa just said, that you're making sure that you're involving everybody in the creative process so that you get as much input as possible. It is a sort of feedback cycle as well, which I suppose gives the structure. I'm just sort of rambling on now as well, but it's a very interesting question, and I think the essence of it is the communication and the horizontal communication. As soon as you've got hierarchies, it's very difficult for people to be creative and that to be seen or accepted from the people up above who have the power. Or in my experience, anyway. So yeah, that's my contribution.
Yeah, I love what you bring in from permaculture. It's so interesting, the idea of limitations as fostering creativity. And I wanted to let you know that after the last live call, I was checking in with Dominic Barter about how that had gone. And I was a bit concerned because I only managed to invite him to speak in the last 10 or 15 minutes of the call. And I was worried that he might be upset by that. And he said, I didn't even ask him. He just on his own said, I really appreciated the time limitation because it was just a very clear message. Just get to the point as quickly as possible. You know, people are leaving the call while I'm talking. That's really clear feedback. So that limitation actually really helped him to make his points very succinctly. And in the same way, I hear you saying, you know, when we're working on a creative project, it can be helpful to look at, well, what are the constraints we're working within, and how can those serve us in doing something that is really going to foster life in the best way? I think that's a fun insight to play with.
I think, well, you know, permaculture, we have the solution is in the problem.
Yes.
So we actually almost see restrictions as an advantage, as the basis sort of stimulants. If you have that sort of personality, you know, okay, this is what you've got, but how can I, you know, find a way with the restrictions, which is something that's very sorry, I'm trying to think in English. I speak Dutch most of the time. It's a bit difficult. But in the society at the moment, of course, you know, that's what we're up against, is being boxed in and trying to find a way to be creative anyway and find solutions within those restrictions, that you're not just having sort of full out revolution, but you're working with what's already there. Mm-hmm. But does is it relevant what I'm saying, Richard? I'm interested in your.
Tim, I think is what you're referring to me, right? I completely agree. I think we're in a business setting that we're selling creative services, so things like design and writing and technology sometimes, and technology in and of itself is its own kind of balance of creative and technical. So yeah, I can completely resonate with what you're saying. And usually what we try to do in our process is in, you know, early meetings with our clients, we have collaborative discovery workshops where everybody's ideas are captured and encouraged, and this kind of, we use mind mapping. Someone mentioned mind mapping earlier, and we use those tools definitely to make sure that we're capturing all the ideas and then funneling them through, okay, now we have captured all of these really great ideas as a group. What are the constraints that we need to kind of funnel these ideas into something that's going to be real and that lives under, you know, the premise of whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's timeline, budget, technology limitations, you know, skill set. There's all kinds of, you know, limitations there. It happen. I mean, in our world, we build web apps and web products and digital products and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of layers of complexity that go on in a lot of those kind of things. But overall, I find the best way to do that is finding that balance. Like, unbridled creativity can lead to never getting things done, but like too many constraints can lead to strangling creativity and not coming up with good solutions. So for us, it's always been about a balance, and that's why I was just curious to hear from other people on that. So thank you for that.
Great. And Martina has been raising her hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something that helped me going through these processes at work very often. When we were in that first stage of finding ideas, and someone taught me to think that it's easier to tame a wild horse than to put life into a dead horse. So the idea was, in the brainstorming moment, to just go wild with ideas and not think about constraints or things that could not be possible, but just dream and get the wildest ideas. Also just turning around things in your head and coming with all different things. And then in the second moment, you go and see what is possible. And it's a little bit what Tim already said that they are doing. But I just like this picture of the horse, that you can tame a wild horse, but you cannot put life into a dead horse.
I love that. Thank you. It's the same reason that when we're in a meeting and we're needing some fresh ideas, we'll often have a brainstorm, And you're not allowed to cut down ideas or criticize them or even discuss them in a brainstorm. Just get those crazy ideas written down on a sheet of paper. And then in the next stage, we start discussing them and figuring out what's going to work. Oh, and Tim has posted a link to Natalie Goldberg's book, A Wild Mind, Living the Writer's Life, which was a Bible of mine at one point in my life. Love that book.
Yeah,
And about getting back to that crazy first mind when we're writing.
And not letting the editor take control.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So it's actually 10 minutes before the end of the call, believe it or not. I wonder, Tim, would you be willing to post, it's such a great question, has generated so much discussion. Would you be willing to post that question in the forum with a reference to this module and see if folks who are not on the call want to join in? I would love to see
Absolutely.
that.
Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if you would be willing to give us a little bit of feedback about how the live calls are going. Is there something that you're wanting that's not happening? I've gotten a lot of feedback from people who were on the call and enjoyed it. Would you like to have more guest speakers? Would you like to have more of a structured sort of presentation and Q&A? Really just wanted to give a couple of minutes to hear from folks if you have anything to share about that. Martina?
Yeah, I just would like to start because I have to go afterwards because I still have a yoga class today. Well, what I think or what I really enjoy about the live calls is to get in touch and actually see people and see the faces, hear the voices. And so for me, it's not so important what we actually are talking about or, yeah. That's nice added value, but I think what I really like is to have a picture of people and getting to know people. So that is the biggest value for me. And then I like seeing how you facilitate the meetings. That's something that I think I also can learn a lot from. So again, not so much about what the topic is in the live call, but a little bit how you manage the whole call. I think that is, yeah. And then I realize after the calls, there is always something, some little bit of information or something someone said or something that, a seed that grows then during the week or the next days. So that's also very nice. So thank you.
Great, thanks. I saw a lot of nodding during that. It looks like that struck a chord with others too.
I agree, and again, apologize that my video is not working today because that's a really good point, and I've gotten a lot of value out of being able to see people and connect with them and hear others' perspectives.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Tim. Hopefully it will be fixed by next time.
Yep, we'll figure it out.
Other comments?
Yeah, I have the same thing. It's just nice to see people's faces and yeah, with that doing all the work on internet and it's a bit weird. You sort of get a sort of unreal feeling about it, and this makes it real again. So yeah, I'd quite like to have some guest speakers, I think, if they're available. But otherwise, yeah, no, I enjoy it. It's good like this.
Great. Sarah?
I also agree. I think it's great to see everyone's face. That's what's most valuable to me, I think. And I'm trying to think of the difference between this and the forums, which are also really valuable. And I'm thinking that maybe the forums are a little bit more structured just by nature of the way we post on them. And so this live call to me is something that can be a bit more spontaneous. So I like the idea to not necessarily have too much of a structure to it or an agenda. I wasn't on the last call, and it sounds like it was really interesting to have someone like a scheduled speaker come on. So I'm looking forward to watching that. And I do think, I love lectures of all kinds. I could sit in lectures all day long. So obviously presentations would be really useful too. But if I had to choose, in a 1 hour call and, a limited time to do stuff, I think that interacting with everyone on the course is probably the most valuable.
Great. Nadia had her hand up, and then Therese, I see you.
Yeah, it's pretty much what Sarah just said is what I wanted to say. I think the fact that we can interact and that the call kind of goes one direction or the other depending on how the people are responding, I think that's great. There is still some kind of structure in the live call, I find, and I think it's more like a direction. And I think that's good because otherwise it'll be totally chaotic as to how we started. But I think it's just good and it's enough. I mean, there's no need to more. What I actually really liked with what Alison, you said you kind of felt a bit bad about not giving Dominic much time. I actually liked very much the fact that he was treated casually. I mean, I don't know if that's the right way to treat your guests, but it felt more like it was indeed a chat session. We were all there together, rather than he was the main lecturer and we were the student having to listen to, and having to dare asking a clever question. So I thought it was great that he was, I mean, I don't think it's great he didn't have a lot of time. That's not what I mean, but I think that he was treated as a guest, but as part of everyone else, rather than a special guest who gets 50 minutes and no one else has a chance to discuss with him. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, cool. Therese, yeah.
So I think we're doing right now a very special online course, so not an online course where it's like I study individually back home in my room and that's my thing, but it's all about building a community as well. And that's also something that I find what I work on professionally or in my research, like how important it is to create this learning community. So I really appreciate how we always start this live call today with the rituals and last week with what we feel grateful for. And also, as some others among us also, like when you post something and you might not get a reaction, that at least I identified my own self-oppression, that like the first thing I do is like, I thought I did something wrong, I wrote something awkward, instead of maybe wondering, okay, that's a huge online course and maybe not everything is seen. And so just, observing myself and all of us kind of in the talks and our live sessions as well, I think is very helpful. As it was said already, I think by Martina before, to see you facilitating, but also to see how we might implement things that we have already learned, be it like non-compassionate communication and so on. So I think it's an interesting place of self-observation, these live calls as well. And one last note on the guest speakers, I also really appreciated that we had Dominic on the call last week. But I think given the fact that we have one or two more live calls, I'm not sure if you were referring to the entire course, but I think a good mixture, just long live diversity. So thanks for today.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. That's all really helpful to hear. It sounds like most of you are really appreciating getting to see and hear each other and sort of get more of the personal human side of building community to sort of give life to the conversations that you're having with each other online and in the forums and the activities. And some of that also comes when you are doing the group activities and you might have a Skype call or something like that with your group. But this is an invitation to the whole class, so maybe more of you come on these calls. And I also heard that you mostly enjoy them being unstructured for the most part, although there is a loose structure to them. Where we have an introduction and we have questions and we might have a topic we discuss, and then we would close with something. So within that loose structure, having some freedom to pursue what comes up seems really valuable to you.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. What I'm hearing. Great. Well, you're right. We only have one more call. It's, I think, next Wednesday. Is that right? Yep, next Wednesday at the same time. So I probably won't have a guest speaker on there. If I do, I'll announce it in the announcements. Yeah. And I had a couple of other questions, but I think I'll just ask them in a forum because we're running out of time and I don't want to hold you long. But there are questions about how the forums are working and yeah. So, oh, I also wanted to just apologize to anyone who might be on here or watching the video if I haven't graded your Module 2 reflection yet, because I've just noticed last night that I didn't finish those it was just after Chad had died when the deadline happened, and I didn't have my head in the game and thought I had finished them and hadn't. So apologies if I graded your Module 3 but not your Module 2. I will get to that today. All right. And then I had an idea for a closing, and Tim, since we can't see your video, I don't know, Taylor, if you want to turn it on, but Tim, you'll just have to be our observer, because my idea is to create something with our arms on the call. I had this idea of singing a song together, and I realized we can't do that because the audio won't all come on at the same time. It'll block each other out. So I thought we might, make some shapes with our arms. Like I'll make this shape right here. And then other people can make other shapes with their arms, and we'll see what shows up on our screen. And it will be different for each of us because we're each in a different part of the screen. Oh, so I invite you to click on, if you have speaker view on, in the upper right, change it to gallery view. And gallery view will give you everybody's video at one same size. Everybody got gallery view on? Yep. Okay, so take your arms and do something with them that you think might be cool to see. And we're creating an artwork, everybody. This is art. Now put your head somewhere that you think might be funny compared to your arms. There we go. How's it look, Tim?
It looks great. I'm laughing. I'm also undulating my arms, but you can't see that.
Oh, cool. All right, everybody wiggle your fingers. Wow, the art just changed completely. All right, now face your hands toward the screen and wiggle them even bigger. Whoa. Put your fingers right by the camera and wiggle them. All right, thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, I see my daughter doing things like this on her video chats all the time, and I thought, why not give us the permission to mess around a little bit with this crazy medium that we're in?
That's excellent.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording in a minute, but I wanted to let everyone unmute. Go ahead and unmute yourself, and let's just hear everybody's voice one more time, and then when we've heard from everyone, I'll stop the recording. So goodbye. See you next time. Feel free to speak whatever language you want.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Lovely to see you all.
Bye.
Okay, I'm stopping the recording now.